Hey, what's up ladies and gentlemen, my name is Colin from Learning History Together and today we're going to watch a video about the Battle of the Bulge, as you can see by the YouTube title. So basically I did a video 2 years ago about the Battle of the Bulge, and this one is by Simple History about the Battle of the Bulge. I think it's like 4 minutes long, maybe talking even less than 4 minutes, so it will be short and sweet, but we'll try to look at what we can expand on and maybe even what we can correct. But I don't think a channel with 5 million subscribers is gonna make a habit of making mistakes. So we'll just try to enjoy it and try to expand on everything slightly a little bit, right? So anyway, let's get right into the video.
The Battle of the Bulge, December 16th, 1944 through January 25th, 1945, the Ardennes. Following the successful Normandy landings in June 1944 and the various landings in southern France, the Allied powers advanced quickly through France, faster than what the military leadership of both the Allies and Germany had anticipated. Due to this, the Allied troops were suffering from fatigue from weeks of combat, supplies were dangerously low, and the supply lines themselves were extremely thin. Hitler decided that if the German army could quickly attack through the Belgian Ardennes forest, a weak quiet part in the Allied line, occupied by battle-weary units, and capture the Allies' supply port of Antwerp, he could split the Allied front in two. As a result of this, Hitler could make a separate peace with Britain and the USA, rather than unconditional surrender and
Okay, so basically he's talking right now about the Battle of the Bulge, and Hitler was making plans, right? So he actually tasked two generals. One was Gert von Rundstedt and the other was Walter Meudel to make a plan on how to do the Battle of the Bulge. One either made a 15-mile or 50-kilometer wide offensive line, and the other made 25. Hitler wanted to make it way bigger. He declined both their tactics, he declined both their ideas, and said we need to make this front way bigger. Long story short, anyway, Walter Meudel said, hey, that's not gonna work. We will make a dent, we will make a bulge, but once the bulge is made, we will get pushed back. That's exactly what happened. Of course, it's a bit broad in the way I say it, but I do this from recall from like studying this 2 years ago. So anyway, that's exactly what happened, what Walter Meudel said. And eventually the Germans lost this battle.
Focused on Soviet Russia. This was all fantasy, and his commanders were not optimistic the offensive would go ahead. After a 2-hour artillery bombardment on the Allied lines, the attack, comprising of 200,000 German troops and almost 1,000 tanks of the 5th and 6th Panzer Armies and the 7th Army, began on the American forces on December 16, 1944. The German forces achieved complete surprise on the outnumbered American troops. Special forces caused...
So, the thing is, they indeed advanced, and you would have the 5th, 6th, and 7th Panzer armies advancing into Belgium. So you would have the British, they're stuck in the Netherlands because they try to go around the Siegfried line through the Netherlands. So the Commonwealth nations are there. The Americans are mostly in Belgium at the moment, and they are the ones bordering Germany. So this battle is predominantly fought by the Americans. The British are, in another country. So they're trying to take Antwerp, which was previously already said, because Antwerp was a very strategic port for the Allies, supply port. I believe even the Comet tank actually arrived through the port of Antwerp as well. Eventually was able in the last couple of months of the World War II to be able to fight there. The port of Antwerp was actually able to be used because of the Canadians freeing the Westerschelde in the Netherlands. It was incredibly important to free that port, or free the waterway, because otherwise the Germans could just keep hacking away at everything, trying to come through and trying to go to Antwerp. And lastly, the 6th Panzer Group, which was mentioned previously as well, was also known as Kampfgruppe Peiper, and under Joachim Peiper, but Peiper also committed several war crimes, which he was put on trial for. He was put on trial for it because he killed just less than 100 Americans, just executed them with machine guns. Though I must add that the Allies also frequently did this during D-Day because they had nowhere to store those surrenderies, so they were just executed. Anyhow, let's continue.
Confusion by sending in English-speaking German soldiers dressed up in U.S. uniforms who changed road signs and cut telephone wires. The bad weather for the moment was also too
So it was talking about German troops in American uniforms being sent into enemy lines, right? This operation was named Operation Greif, and Operation Greif was mostly a American or a German unit dressed up as an American unit to try and cause as many friendly fire incidents as possible. Of course, if you were captured like this, assuming this is a German man, assuming you were captured like this by an American and they would find out you were German, you would just get executed. There's not a single rule, still there isn't today I believe, but there's not a single rule if you're dressed up as an enemy combatant that the enemy isn't allowed to execute you. Which sounds harsh, but also it's fair, right? Because you're trying to cause friendly fire issues. Definitely fair. I believe actually this also happened in the Second World War, and some people from from the group under Otto Skorzeny were also very much executed.
road signs and cut telephone wires. The bad weather for the moment was also too cloudy and foggy, which meant that the might of the Allied Air Force could not be used. Many U.S. units became overrun or had to surrender. Those that were not established a defense around road junctions at Saint-Vith and Bastogne.
One of the units, of course, under a lot of fire was the 101st, but also was, for example, the 14th Cavalry, which really took a brunt of the force. Eventually, they also made it out. Not a lot alive, of course, but as a unit, they kept cohesion, were able to regroup, got restocked, and eventually were able to rejoin the battle again. So yeah, there are a lot of units, of course, but those two units are the ones I've read the most about, and yeah, definitely worth a shout out.
The difficult terrain of the Ardennes made a large-scale offensive unexpected, so it would take a while for the Allied High Command to accept that this was a major attack. While the Germans did see some success in the center, the Northern 6th Panzer Army's advance stalled within a few days. On December 18th, the 101st Airborne Division were surrounded by the Germans at Bastogne. Cold, starved, outnumbered, and low on ammunition, the 101st would hold out for 7 days against the German assault.
If you've seen the series Band of Brothers, they do cover this battle as well, especially like the horrors and the thoughts and everything around it. They did cover. Definitely worth a watch under Lieutenant Dick Winters. It's a masterpiece in my opinion. Definitely one of the greatest series I've ever watched. Also one of the very few series I can watch without being like, this isn't true. This isn't true. This isn't true. So yeah, definitely one of my all-time favorite series of all time. Yeah.
On Christmas Eve, some German troops almost reached the River Meuse, but with little fuel, the German advance had reached its peak. On December 26th, General Patton's Third Army, which had completely turned around from its advance, relieved the 101st at Bastogne. The German resupply difficulties had grown, and the skies had cleared, allowing the Allied air power the ability to target German forces. The German blitzkrieg tactics also couldn't work in the heavily wooded, snowy forests, deep valleys, and narrow roads of the Ardennes. Even heavily armored vehicles such as the Germans' Tiger II heavy tank could not turn the tide because it consumed huge amounts of fuel. The US forces began a counteroffensive on January 3rd.
Yeah, so I do also have to add, by this time in 1944, Romania was actually already lost to the Nazis, right? So that was also because the Romanians had a lot of oil fields, and they were vital to German panzers, to German airplanes. So that severely hampered their war effort, especially in the Battle of the Bulge.
3rd. By this point, the German Panzer Division were so low on fuel, they abandoned a lot of their tanks.
Which I'm pausing really quickly now, but this picture really reminds me of the tank in La Glaise. This is a Tiger II tank, and I actually went there on my 17th birthday, I believe in 2022. And it was insane, because the thing is, right, because you're turning a corner and you just see this huge monstrosity of a tank standing there, and you just, well, I knew what a Tiger II was. I was really excited to see one, of course, and I got out of the car and I stood next to it, and my head was around like this high, like I barely stuck above the hull of the tank, which was, to me, was surreal, right? Because I consider myself quite tall. I'm like 186, so to barely stick above a hull of a Virgo, and then the Virgo is like, yeah, what is it? 80 to 1 meter taller than me. Was pretty crazy. And that tank also, I believe, had some dents in the front, some armor rounds bounced on the hull there. So yeah, extensively used. I believe even to some point when the crew abandoned it, they traded it for a bottle of, I believe, wine, straight from my head. And now it's just property of La Glaise.
The U.S. counteroffensive regained all land lost during the German offensive by late January. The Battle of the Bulge was the largest battle fought by the Americans in World War II. Due to deep snow, cold temperatures, bad weather, and dwindling fuel reserves, the German Army and Air Force were unable to launch the crushing blow to the Allies Hitler had hoped for. While the attack is known as the Ardennes Offensive, the initial attack by the Germans created a triangular bulge that stretched for miles into the Allied front line, creating the commonly known name of Battle of the Bulge. The Americans suffered around 80,000 casualties, while the Germans had 100,000 casualties, and most of the tanks used in the offensive, which could not be replaced.
So, of course, the Americans had lost a lot of troops here, right? It's a terrible tragedy, a lot of casualties. Same goes for of course, the German side. But I do think one shout out to another battle is definitely worthy of a mention. This is the Battle of Monte Cassino. A lot of Americans, a lot of Allied forces had died here as well. Most of the time it's actually forgotten by a lot of people. But to think about it, it's kind of crazy how many people laid their lives down for us. And even in battles we don't really talk about, or talk about a lot less, of course. Anyway, that was the video. If you guys enjoyed the video, make sure to leave a like, a sub, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Goodbye.